Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is from Gaudi Gwareri Mahalla Tija. Manmukh Suta, Maya Moh Pyar, Gurmukh Jage, Gun Gyan Vichar. So jan jage, jin naam pyar. Sehje jage save na koe, pure gurte buje jan koe rahao. असंत अनाड़ी कदे न बूझे, कथनी करे ते माया नाल लुझे, अंध अज्ञानी कदी न सीजे। इस युग में राम नाम निस्तारा, विरला को पाए गुर शब्द विचारा। आप तरह सगले कुल उधारा, इस कलयुग में कर्म धर्म न कोई, कली का जन्म चंडाल के घर होई। नानक नाम बिना को मुक्त ना हुई. In this passage, what we will discover is a contrast that is being drawn between existing methods, practices, versus the way of the Gurmukh. Because we know that in Gurbani, it is the Manmukh and the Gurmukh who are paired as opposites. The Gurmukh being the ideal, the Manmukh being our default position. We all default to being Manmukhs, and we have to work our ways into becoming a Gurmukh. And that is how this passage begins. Manmukh Suta Maya Moh Pyar. So the ego-centered Manmukh. That's what a Manmukh is. One that is only seeing surface things. One that is following the lead of the senses blindly. That is a Manmukh. So a Manmukh Suta, asleep. Not physically asleep, but benumbed, if you will. Maya Moh Pyar, in love of delusionary Maya. Maya, of course, we know, is in a fundamental way delusionary. It's not what it seems to be to the ordinary mind. But the mind gets wrapped up in this world of causation. So that's the state of the Manmukh. In contrast, the Gurmukh, the Gur-guided, the ones who are facing the Guru, literally that's what Gurmukh means. It's a process. It's also used to indicate a person, but rarely. It's usually indicated for the Guru or for even the primal Guru. But through the process of being a Gurmukh, Jage Gun Gyan Vichar. So the Gurmukh awakens through reflection on self-knowledge and cultivation of virtue. Gun Gyan Vichar. Gun, the virtue, which is dependent on quelling the passions. You cannot cultivate virtue without disciplining the senses. Gyan, of course, is knowledge. It refers to self-knowledge. Bichari. Bichari is to reflect on self-knowledge. That's the process of being a Gurmukh. And that awakens you to love. You have to also have devotion to self-knowledge. Se jan jage, jin naam pyar. And then in the Rahao, or the reflection for us, is Sehje jage save na koe, pure gurte bujhe jan koe. So now, the state of being jage, of being awakened, is being referenced. And that awakening, of course, comes through Pure Gur, the perfect wisdom. It is through that wisdom that one awakens. Sahaje jage then. Then the awakening then is in a state of spontaneous alertness. It's natural. You do not have to, you just have to, you're not manufacturing it. It's there. You're simply tapping into your natural state, which is latent, that you're unaware of. It's a state of natural ease. In other words, you harmonize yourself with the environment. You shun extremes. You're balanced in the middle. So that's how it comes about. Pure gurte bujya jan koe. So through perfect wisdom, you develop this discernment of the self. This is self-understanding. And then you're in a state of spontaneous alertness. And in contrast, the Manmukh, who is called an asant and an anadi, do not cultivate this discernment. They lack this discernment, self-knowledge. Asant anadi kade na bujjai, cannot. The restless and the ignorant mind cannot find discernment, because you need to tranquilize the mind in some ways before that state of sahaj emerges. Kathni kare. Of course, the Manmukh talks a lot about wisdom. Te maya naal lujjai, but remains entangled in maya. Lujjai is to get entangled in maya. So it is all talk and not walking the talk. And a Manmukh, of course, is an andh agyani, lacking in wisdom. They are blinded by ignorance and they don't succeed. Kade na sijja. So here you see a contrast being drawn between the Gurmukh and the Manmukh, or our default state versus the target state for us, which is to be a Gurmukh, to be in a state of alertness all the time. And then the Guru speaks about this age. Is jug mein Ram naam nistara. And the last verse also refers to is kal jug mein karam taram na koi. So you see the contrast that is being drawn. Karam taram refers to karam kand, rituals and practices that were prevalent in the Vedic, in the world of Hindu thought. So the Guru is very clearly here making that distinction and says, Is jug mein Ram naame nistara. It is only through Ram Naam. Ram Naam, self-knowledge. Ram is an attribute of the self. It simply means that self which is permeated in the universe. Ramya hoya. Is jug mein Ram Naam nistara. Nistara, a crossing. The suggestion here is that we have to cross over to another state of being. So we have to find that crossing. And that crossing, the Guru tells us, will come only through self-knowledge. Ram Naame Nistara. So here we are not talking of a physical crossing. We are talking about a crossing in the dimensions of the consciousness. If you recall, our ordinary consciousness is tied up with Maya and is not in a position to even reflect on itself. But through reflection on Ram Naam, self-knowledge, one finds one's way across. But it is only a virla, a privileged, a rare one who actually finds that crossing through Guru Sabad Vichara. Through Guru Sabad Vichara, again, a reflection. There's a lot of emphasis on reflection. Reflection on the self, which means that we have to use our mind to actually reflect on itself. And that requires rationality, it requires a degree of detachment in order to shed the light on oneself. And that is where the Guru wisdom comes into play. It guides us on how to do it. So then, is jug mein hai Ram naam ne sitara, virla ko paaye Guru sabad vichara. In this age, only right knowledge, which is self-knowledge, will carry you across. And as we know in Gurbani, when the word tariye is used as it is in this verse, in the next line, aap tare sagale kul udara, the implication or the assumption is that we understand what it is that we are swimming across, or ki tarna. It is the ocean of existence, Bhavasagar. So we have to bear that in mind. That is the backdrop. Again, the ocean of fear or the ocean of existence is not some physical thing. It is our consciousness. It is our restlessness, because our consciousness is fearful when it is in a Manmukh state. So we have to cross over with the guidance of the Guru. In fact, we know that the Guru has been referred to as the ferry that will take you across. That idea is being mentioned here in this verse. So, right knowledge will carry you across the ocean of existence. And they are the privileged, virla ko, rare. So the rare are privileged to receive this self-knowledge. And then they actually cross over to a higher dimension of consciousness, to Gurmukh, to a state of being a Gurmukh. And now, they are not selfish. They provide support to all humanity. They engage in big projects of helping others. Aapatara, they of course ferry themselves across. Sagale kul udara. Kul means a family, and we can safely say that it includes not only your immediate family, but it is referring to humanity as well, because we are all one family. So the idea here is that a Gurmukh will benefit humanity. So we are to cultivate our consciousness in order to bring value to the world, and not just be selfish consumers, which a Manmukh is. And in conclusion, is Kaljug meh karm dharm na koi, Kali ka janam chandal ke kar hoi. Very interesting. The word chandal. What is being said is Kaljug mein karm dharm na koi. This can be read in one of two ways. Karam dharm na koi can be read to say wicked deeds and lawlessness prevails in this day. And the age of darkness, which is the present age, being referred to as the age of darkness, is rooted in the Chandal. That is to say, it was born out in the house of an outcast. In Gurbani, the outcast is really the ego. So what is being said here is that we are living in an ego consciousness. The ego is primary. And that's why no amount of ritualistic practice is going to help, because the mind is deeply embedded in the ego, which is the outcast. And Chandal is associated with anger, which in turn is rooted in ignorance. So you're not going to get anything out of external ritualistic practices because they are transactional in nature. They involve propitiating deities, and you're not going to get anything else. Nanak naam bina, this is the concluding line. Nanak naam bina ko mukt na hoy. Says Nanak, naam bina, without self-knowledge. Bina ko mukt na koi hoy. You cannot find liberation. So we've seen the contrast now. Gurmat is predicated upon the cultivation of virtue, knowledge, and rational inquiry. Gurmukh jage gun gyan bichari. Reflection. It shuns the extremes of sensual pleasure or asceticism. It advocates moderation, moderating the appetites, so that you can actually engage in self-inquiry, because it requires the mind to be somewhat stable. Otherwise, you can't. So you have to really analyze yourself. There is a great deal of rational inquiry. This means turning the spotlight upon yourself. And we are not normally given to such reflection, because the mind is always chasing something outside. And here is where good wisdom is the guide. So it follows that for us, Sikhi is a path of experience, experiencing oneself actually, arriving at the right knowledge of oneself, which is self-knowledge, Nam, and not based on any speculation or propitiation of any deities. We have to use our minds to understand the mind. On that thought, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.